My journey in discovering my gender identity as a trans girl has largely been quite lonely. Really early on, when I first started to have thoughts of, oh shit, I might be a girl, I was at a point in my life where I'd just come down from being in a really good place. And when I mean down, I mean like this. That kind of spiral. So for me, it meant staying up late at night, playing video games, and then lying in bed in complete confusion. I mean, it came really suddenly for me, like a realization that I wanted to transition. So much so that I think it left me in shock for quite a while. Like, figuring out your gender identity is pretty fucking mentally exhausting, and one of the main ways of escaping and I guess coping with this monumental transgendery thing was, and still is, playing games. You know, I truly believe that video games helped me out a lot in terms of my transition, so what I'd like to do with this video is speak about a few games and the things I love about them, as well as how they impacted my identity in some way or other. For some context, what I've done is gone back and played the games that I'll be speaking on, just as a little refresher and to reflect on why they're so important to me. I mean, let's bite the bullet here, because they go to Celeste. You saw it coming, I saw it coming, Madeline saw it coming. Thinking really hard now, I think that my very first interaction with Celeste may very well have been watching Germa stream it. Seeing him with little Shito have a great time made me want to try it, and I hadn't really played many other platformers other than maybe like a little Super Meat Boy here and there, but there was just something about Celeste that made me just want to jump right in. Coming back to the game recently for the first time in a few years, I can say without a doubt that the main thing that drew me in is the soundtrack. It's just fucking beautiful. Raine is amazing, and the atmosphere that is made through the soundtrack is just jaw-dropping. I remember, like, shortly after finishing playing Celeste for the very first time, I listened to the soundtrack for ages, just non-stop, and to emphasise that, I remember coming home from, like, the cinema with my dad, and putting on the Checking In song from when you're at the hotel, and, like, him even being like, oh, this is pretty good, pretty good, what's this? And I'm like, it's from a game, Dad. Booting up the game for the very first time, you're asked to name your save file, you know, pretty standard stuff, and the default name is Madeline. But back then, when I first played it, this was a pretty big moment for my newly gender questioning self. Going further and actually starting the game, you're given a little insight into the mind of your character. And then you're in, dude. You fucking jump about and do shit, and, you know, you start traversing the beginnings of a big-ass mountain on a chilly, dark night with a crow giving you the only information you'll need to reach the summit. You know, you're off and away. Now, I could go on for hours detailing all the parts about the game chronologically, narrating what a typical first walkthrough might entail, but frankly, I don't want to do that, so instead, I'm going to pick and choose some of my most memorable moments, features, and other little tidbits that make this game one of my all-time favourites. Reaching the first and one of the only other NPCs that you'll come across in the entire game, you meet the Old Woman, great name, and I must say that the way the voices are done in Celeste is just downright adorable, especially Madeline's. Weirdly, I think the game would definitely have lost some of its overwhelming charm if it was fully voice acted. But what do you think? One of the main reasons Celeste has always stuck with me, and why I'm speaking about it in this video in the first place, is the way it depicts themes that you wouldn't really expect to see in an outwardly cutesy, pixelated platformer. From as early as the second level in the game, we're introduced to Madeline's struggles with anxiety. You know, travelling through this dreamlike level where a part of you, or Madeline as the fanbase has dubbed her, opening the window into this pretty hard-hitting theme. One of the first things that Madeline says to you is this. And as we talk more with her, the duality of Madeline really shows. You know, at present, Madeline views her doubts and anxieties as downright creepy. Even so much as having Madeline have legit glowing red devil dog eyes, but as evil as she looks. What she says to us in our first interaction with her doesn't seemingly come from a place of malice. Hell, even the whole part where she's chasing you stems from her just wanting to go home, dude. Madeline truly is just part of Madeline, and as we progress further into the game, we learn that it's not something we can just run away from. Before I speak about this next bit, let's just watch it together first. Speaking more about the theme of anxiety in Celeste, later on in the game, after escaping the sad, lonely, kinda cute clutches of Mr. Oshiro, we travel through the Golden Ridge, and at the end of this level is a gondola. Here is where one of the most memorable and impactful parts of the game lies for me. This representation of a panic attack and the way in which Theo supports us through it hits way harder than it should, and to this day, I still find myself picturing a feather floating in front of me as a technique to try and calm down, and that's on Blurred.
Okay, sir. Okay. So let me go over this again. You want a Big Mac, a large bulk, a 6-piece bacon nugget, and 3 chocolate built bookies.
On Bloods, that's what I want. That's it.
Also, fucking shout out to Lena Raine yet again for perfectly capturing what that all-encompassing dread sounds like. Playing through Celeste for the first time, I had no idea that Madeline is canonically trans, and in honesty, I think that adds to my own personal feelings of my transition being a single player, no split screen, no multiplayer, no online matchmaking kind of experience. Finding that fact out a lot later than when I had completed my playthrough, I was just like, oh damn, that's cool. But on the flip side of those feelings, it has also deepened my connection with Celeste as one of my favourite games. Being at the very start of my transition when playing, going on that journey with Madeline, climbing the mountain, felt almost fucking spiritual looking back on it, and even replaying the game, it's as though I'm returning to my T-girl roots. Speaking about replaying the game, I find myself just noticing things in a way in which I hadn't looked at them before. Kind of like when Marge says, I just think they're neat. And in essence, that's what this video is mainly about really. Things about some of the games I love that I just think are neat. One of the things I think are neat, yeah you get it, is in Celeste, it's the fact that occasionally characters like Madeline, when speaking to you, will pop out of their character portrait, and I know that isn't exclusive to the game, like not at all, but it just makes my goopy brain go, huh, I like that.
I like it a lot.
Another cool thing about the game is that the music and the sound effects become muffled when you go underwater, and again, this isn't exclusive to this game, not at all, again, but I mean, come on, is that not just fucking lovely?
Hello, how are you? I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
Like, I know this video so far is literally just me yapping about special interests in kind of game form, but come on! Being completely real, I haven't 100%ed Celeste. I haven't done a playthrough where I've done all of the B-sides and C-sides. I haven't gotten all of the Crystal Hearts. Plain and simple, I haven't done all there is to do and seen all there is to see. This isn't to say that I won't, not at all. Playing the game again recently, it gave me this fuzzy feeling because I was seeing things and doing things that I'd never even found on my first couple of run-throughs, and I loved it. I'm a person who doesn't really like endings so much. Watching TV shows and other stuff, I always find myself putting off finishing them because I don't want them to be over.
It's over!
Knowing that there's content in Celeste that I haven't experienced yet is this weirdly lovely and comfortable thing, and maybe that says something about who I am in an odd way. I come back to Celeste and it's as though I'm being transported to a time that was really pivotal for me. I do this a lot with games and music, and it's really meaningful. To me, Celeste will always remind me of a time in my life where I was just finally beginning to feel like myself. It's growing out my hair for the first time since childhood. It's practicing makeup skills in the dead of night and being really proud by shitty eyeliner. It's ordering new clothes and wearing dresses with shaven legs. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Celeste is a fucking video game, dude. Get a hold of yourself, you might be silly. Maybe even a little stupid even. But dude, does anyone else not heavily associate games and music and media with memorable moments in your life? Yeah, Celeste is an excellent platformer and it goes out of its way to wrap you up in its charm, but to me, and a lot of other people I bet, it's honestly just so much more than that. It's truly something that heavily supported me early on in a big part of my life and even helped me to realise a lot of things about myself, and for that I'm very thankful. Growing up the youngest of 5, I was exposed to games at a really young age. Having 2 older brothers, I'd constantly ask, when is it my go? And when it was finally my turn, they'd convince me there was a secret level, like off the ledge or a cliff or in unswimmable water, and I'd go, oh my god, a secret level? Where? And that would be my turn, but it was great. What I'm trying to say is that video games have always been a huge part of my life, and long before I even had thoughts about questioning my gender identity, I was playing all sorts of games that I probably shouldn't have been playing, but it didn't stop me because I'm cool like that. From what I've heard about Dark Souls 3 from people, I say people, it's like Twitch chat, Jesus Christ, but Dark Souls 3, it seems like it's pretty divisive, but it was actually my first FromSoft game that I ever experienced, and because of that it will always be my favourite. On top of it being the first Souls-like game that I played, DS3 is also unique for me as a T-girl, because looking back, I played this game at a point of time where I was having these really complicated feelings, but I just didn't know what they meant. Before recognising my gender dysphoria for what it was and why it was happening, I used to get these feelings that nothing was real, and these feelings were made omega super mega 10 billion times worse whenever I looked in the mirror. Looking back, to me now, it's fairly obvious that it was dysphoria of the gender variety, but back then I had no clue what was happening to me, and it was spooky. I think one of the main things that drew me into Dark Souls 3, in comparison to Celeste's soundtrack, I think it was its character customization. I love making my own character because I always get to make a pretty girl, but before coming out I'd play it off as like, oh bro, I just like looking at boobs and butt, when deep down inside I wanted to have boobs and butt in that order. I remember playing Dark Souls 3 for the very first time and being overwhelmed. Idex Gundyr as the bouncer to the uber cool nightclub that is the Kingdom of Lothric really sets the tone for the whole game. I've spoken to a few people who have played FromSoft games before, and I always get the sense that people like to go into these games blind, but that's not me, man. I study these games, pulling up maps and like watch creators. Germa, it's just always Germa.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna turn this into a social eating stream, where I summon like 4 people and you guys kill the dragon while I eat hot dogs. Alright, get him! I command it! Get him!
Don't lie to me, you've been there too. You have like 7 of the Extra Life wiki pages open. Like, you get this, Smithing Stone 7, I mean that's Elden Ring, but you get what I mean. In terms of how Dark Souls 3 impacted my identity, there's just one answer. No, not that answer. This thing, Anri of Astoria, is an NPC you encounter throughout the game, and what's cool is that Anri's gender is entirely dependent on that of the character, so if you made a guy, Anri will be a girl, and have a feminine voice actor, and if you made a girl, Anri will be a dude and have a masculine voice actor. You know, it's a minor feature in an otherwise huge game, but I think this entire video is talking about minor features, to be honest, but it stuck with me, and when figuring out my name, for a while there, I may or may not have considered Anri itself. Calling back quickly to associating media with specific points in time, I heavily associate Farron Swamp with this song from one of my favourite musicians. Again, am I alone in this? Whenever this song plays on shuffle or something, I can picture myself extinguishing those 3 fucking chimneys and admiring the copious amounts of slugs that are just chilling out.
Oh, they're slugs! They're actually slugs! Wow! Oh my god, look at them! Look at it, this is a real slug we're looking at!
I streamed some Dark Souls 3 recently, but I did it a bit differently. I played with an item and enemy randomizer mod installed, which was a little kooky, as my welcome back into my favourite installment in the series was met by some of the most challenging endgame bosses, being the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th main bosses, which was fantastic. Taking a walk back in time to some of the older FromSoft games made me painfully aware of how Elden Ring has softened me up and my Souls-like skills along with it, big time. I'm far too used to just trading aggro with summons and building OP builds, and coming back to DS3 I must learn a lot of things over again. This was actually quite refreshing though, as it made me appreciate the designs and fights a whole lot more. I'm gonna say it. Some of the most recent Elden Ring DLC bosses just feel a little fucking unfair. And coming back to Dark Souls 3 was like getting a hug. No Beyblade moves where the bosses become a big ball of stinky death. Just honest, truthful, good old-fashioned American bar fighting with Darky and Medea. When you think of the most memorable bosses from Dark Souls 3, do you imagine these guys? I won't lie, I picture these guys too, but I also picture these things. In my head, if all of the bosses in Dark Souls 3 were in like secondary school, you know damn well that Osiris is in the library or the music building at break time, and the Crystal Sages are like speaking their own weird twin language, drawing on their hands during lessons. What I'm getting at is that these bosses sometimes go unnoticed, whether that's because people often one-shot them or just skip over them entirely, but they're cool, man. Crystal Sages say some cool shit backwards and it's pretty creepy, and Osiris just has a cool fight in general, you know, like baby smashing his way into his second phase is just kind of sick. Oh, I also put Lorien and Lothric in this bit too, because of the voice line. I mean, come on. Rise, brother.
My brother. Unyielding sword of Lothric's prince. Rise if you would, for that is our curse.
Like I said at the beginning of this bit, this was my first Souls game, and because of that, it's always going to be my favourite. Like, that's just how it works. There's something about this game for me that's like, oh my god, dude, it's just so lovely. But, like, being completely genuine, this game has done a lot for me. I mentioned how I played this game in a pretty strange part of my life in regard to realizations and stuff, and all of that's really true. My first experience of this game was at a point where I was really struggling to figure myself out, and no, I'm not going to say anything like Dark Souls 3 made me trans. More so, it just gave me something to focus on, so I wasn't staring in the mirror 24/7 being like, who are you? Let me take you back to around 2011 or so. It's Christmas time and oh man, you know I'm not doing much. I just discovered the Yogscast and the Shadow of Israel series. It was like crack to my teeny tiny little brain. So naturally, I watched the whole series in like a day or so, and that's like a lot of watching, right? So that means you gotta be comfy when doing something as crazy as this. And I had the right idea. Curled up on the sofa, duvet to keep me from that nasty bitch British weather, and if that wasn't enough, a fake electric fire blowing directly onto the duvet. How could life get any better than this, is what I assume I must have been thinking. It was only until I started smelling something funny that I thought about maybe averting my gaze from Granny Bacon, but nah, this shit was too good. But cue shouting from my mum, she comes over and like rips the duvet off me. I must have been like, stop! How could she betray me like this? Her own flesh and blood, destroying my nest? She then proceeded to let me know that I had been sat in my stink so long watching the two funny men on my iPad that the electric heater had burned a rather large hole in my duvet. From what I remember, I think I just kind of moved somewhere else and turned the heater off and carried on watching the Diggy Hole Man. It was around this time where I was burning holes in duvets and binging every Yogscast video in existence where I first came into contact with Team Fortress 2, my beloved. Up until then, my online multiplayer gaming experience was exclusively done on the Xbox 360. You know, the standard stuff like Halo 3 Duck Hunt with friends, and then when Reach came out it was the same thing, but also building maps to play on ourselves in Forge. I remember making like a really accurate version of my childhood street with a friend, and like, it was so fun. My older brother introduced me to TF2, I think, and I started playing it on the family iMac, which was bought as a gaming PC. Jesus fucking Christ, why was it an iMac? Nevertheless though, it was amazing. The graphics were amazing, and I just recall loving the absolute shit of the cartoony style. I'd never really been one for realistic looking games, and between that and playing 2-4 hours on end, it was heaven. It must have been a good couple months of playing 2-4 and listening to people talk shit over voice but never saying anything myself before my interest started to wane, and that was when I discovered the toxic, sludgy, sloppy beauty of trading servers. Here I could do all the shit I was already doing in 2-4, which was mainly just cloak and dagger spying around like a little weirdo, but I could also engage in Wolf of Wall Street-esque behaviour of trading my items away to complete strangers for hats. Sharing my Steam account with my older brother meant that our username was completely under the influence of whatever Stardog-induced in-joke was the most funny at the time.
Do not send me no Stardog. I ain't having it. I don't like it. It's killing the man them. Get me Skittles, Haribos, flavours, bit of Cali. Cali.
And from what I can remember, my baby brain barely understood them. The only old username I can concretely remember looking back for some reason is They Call Me Fudgy, and to this day I'm still unsure about what it actually meant. It was probably hilarious when you were high, but I was like 14 years old and not high. I actually asked my older brother what this name meant for the purposes of this video, and in true ex-stoner fashion, he can't remember its meaning either. Classic. A core and unfortunate TF2 memory for me is being absolutely 100% scammed out of my hard-earned hats by another trade server dickhead. At the time, I didn't know that some items were only usable during Halloween, and I traded away a goddamn fucking fancy fedora for like 50 pence worth of Halloween cosmetics. Of course, I cried like a wee baby.
Wee baby.
And then I think from then on I barely traded after that. TF2 is where I discovered Jeremy Germa985 Albertson, and to this day I occasionally go back and watch his gameplay commentaries to fall asleep to. Prime TF2 bangers like The Corner Creeps and The Pirate Spy are like Shakespearean classics that need to be studied, in my opinion. Between Germa and Stir and the Meet the videos, TF2 content used to be a complete goldmine, and I can still remember my complete awe in seeing content creators like Germa and the Yogscast do crossover style videos for charity. It was like a fucking TF2 cinematic universe, and I lapped it up like a dog. I had a really big break away from TF2 after the game kind of stagnated for a long period of time. I think a lot of people did. It was like around the time of the Jungle Furno update. So long in fact, when I returned to the game I was no longer a boy. Go figure. Playing the game now is like pure nostalgia fuel, but I'm honestly really enjoying picking up a few games here and there, especially because now I have a job and therefore money. That means I can live out They Call Me Fudgy's dreams of owning unusuals and Australian weapons. It is a complete waste of money, but it is a pretty looking waste of money, and I'll be damned if it isn't well spent in my T-girl eyes. Because of how young I was when I first started playing TF2, I'm actually kind of unsure about how it impacted my gender identity, but as a little tidbit, I definitely remember kind of obsessing over the many different theories that the pyro might be a girl, like watching game theory videos about like, oh my god, her pinky is shorter than the average dude, it's a girl, confirmed, and then spending like a week straight playing solely the pyro, even though I'm just not that big of a fan of the pyro playstyle. I mean, other than like pyro sharking and air blast trolling, that is. It's been funny coming back to TF2 now. I'm a bit older, because you press tab to see all the other people in your server, and it's like 80% of the usernames have hee or heh in them, and there are brisket and trans flag profile pictures everywhere. Like, you die and you see that someone has their Vitasaur named estradiol injection, and it's like, oh wow, I see it now. The TF2 to trans pipeline is pretty streamlined. TF2 is certainly the game that I have the most hours in on Steam, and yes, most of those hours are younger me just sat and trade servers dicking around, but it's just such a smile-inducing, warm, fuzzy feeling of a game, and I don't think any of its successors like Overwatch or other hero shooters can really compare to the vibe and atmosphere that TF2 creates. Like, the entire game just encapsulates this era of my life, and it's so nice to see the game get spikes of attention each year as a community update comes out and everyone has a month of just like playing TF2. Honestly, some of the newest summer update maps have been a blast to play, and it brings back just so many memories. Being an introverted person, games like TF2 have really helped me out a ton in lots of little small ways, but they all add up into this like fond nostalgia that I don't think will ever really go away. This video may not be some extravagant masterpiece, but it may as well be for me. I've always wanted to make my own videos and have lots of scripts on different niche topics, but they never got finished. You know, like I said at the beginning of this video, my journey as a T-girl so far has been pretty lonely, and I suppose the reason that I'm making this video is to have a place to kind of get all these thoughts down onto. If you've been at work or like a family gathering or something and people ask you what you're watching on TV, I hate this question, because the majority of the content that I take in is through YouTube and Twitch and shit, and this has been the case for me for a long time, even longer than when I was burning duvets and watching the Yogscast. My point being, you can spend a lot of time watching video essays and people doing funny, cool stuff on YouTube, and it's kind of only really a matter of time before you're like, I can do that. Well, this is me doing it. When first having thoughts of making videos, my thoughts immediately went to like, yeah dude, I'm gonna make the perfect video essay, but like, being a bit older now, I'm content with just releasing something that I'm happy with and have enjoyed making, and I've done that here. So honestly, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to make more of this kind of stuff. Bye bye!